Hello, Rad.
Hey, Dave.
I've heard a lot about Baby Reindeer. I haven't seen it yet, so tell me what this series is about.
So it's about a stalker, as you heard off the top there, the woman in the clip. And this is a series that's actually it's based on a true story, and it starts off like a comic mix of Fatal Attraction and Misery, but reveals itself just to be far more surprising and messy and emotional and empathetic, and really, Dave, just one of the best shows of the year. And just a spoiler alert, like I am going to be talking about crucial details that are only revealed midway through the series. So if your curiosity has sufficiently been piqued, but you want to go in completely cold, like just turn down the volume for a minute, okay? So here we go. So again, the show's about a bartender who moonlights as a comedian. This is Richard Gadd, basically playing a version of himself, like he did in the one-man play, kind of recounting these experiences. And his character Donnie feels sorry for a woman named Martha, who is played incredibly by Jessica Dunning. So the whole show starts off where she walks into his bar looking frumpy and broken, claims to be broke. He kindly offers her a cup of tea on the house. Then she flips, becomes cheery and excited, claims to be an incredibly successful and busy lawyer with powerful clients, yet she's spending all her time in his bar now and still claims she can't afford the tea. So her vibe is off from the jump. She quickly turns violent and possessive, but his vibe is off too. He entertains her for too long. He can't quite quit her, or despite these awful things she does. He does awful things too. He makes you want to yell at the screen for his terrible choices. And it turns out, well, he's a sexual assault survivor. So he's as imperfect a victim as any, and his behavior and a lot of his relationships are informed by that. And the further the show goes, the more we understand about the trauma that both Donnie and Martha endure, and also like just what they see in each other. And it becomes such an emotional roller coaster, Dave. And when I step back from the show, I can't help but marvel at its structure, like the way the episodes kind of jump back and forth in time, and in a way that seems messy and chaotic, but then kind of reveal themselves to actually be really precise and organized in a way that follows along the messy and chaotic way that we unpack trauma and dig up buried truths and also re-traumatize ourselves and others. Like this show, it's not linear because cause and effect, as far as being a survivor and coping with trauma goes, like is not linear, and it just follows that journey in a way that just feels so raw and emotionally honest.
Well, now this sounds very heavy, and not something you'd want to necessarily spend a lot of time with because it's so dark. And yet, 22 million people have watched it already. Why is it resonating with audiences?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is a show that I think weighs on your soul, and like you're suggesting, like that's not typically something that you get that attracts blockbuster viewership, but it's also a show that's really funny and charming and addictive, even, right? It can even play like true crime, where there's this sort of investigative element where you're looking into who are these people and what are the crimes they committed, and ooh, that was a surprise. And at other times, it's laugh out loud hilarious, right? Some of the stalking, as dark and disturbing as it is, like it's funny, right? Like the victim can't help but laugh at his stalker's methods at times, right? Like the way she types "sent from an iPhone" at the end of an email, but her spelling mistakes give away that she's not actually using an iPhone, right? And the way she stakes out his apartment just to yell obscenities at him, like these crude come-ons that can be funny until they're not, right? Until they cause real pain or feel really threatening. And this is a show that's really good at blurring the lines between what is funny and what is painful, and what is endearing and what is scary, because those lines are all, they're not always clear. And in the same way, like trauma, the same way that trauma becomes undefined, this show defies categorization, right? Like even Wikipedia has it listed as a British black comedy drama thriller. Like it's a mess of all those things in the most revealing way.
Well, using comedy to cope with trauma, that's not something new in all forms of art. Like, is this becoming more popular in entertainment, though?
I think so, and in a good way, right? Because like, especially because audiences, I think, are fed up with all the trauma porn, they've been peddling, that have been peddled to us in the last little while, like triggering content that doesn't really bring more nuanced ways to unpack these things. And look, like Baby Reindeer is a successor to I May Destroy You, which was also a comedy series dealing with the messy and imperfect ways of being a survivor. Also, one of the best shows of the last decade. And I think as far as using comedy to cope with trauma, like can't ignore Hannah Gadsby's Nanette, the influence of that, like a stand-up comedy routine, which was groundbreaking because she used that stand-up stage to unpack the trauma of violent assaults. I think Baby Reindeer, which again is based on a comedian's one-man show where he unpacks his trauma, like it absolutely lives in the shadow of Nanette, feels definitely inspired by that. And in terms of using comedy as a way to trauma, like, yeah, we're seeing it a lot. Actually, the first time I kind of had to grapple with this is in an interview with Sarah Polly. She talked about the story in an interview I had with her in the summer of 2017, but also in a New York Times article she published after the Weinstein allegations dropped, and then in her book Run Towards the Danger. And so this is a story where she talks about how she was with her friends, they were gathered, and they were talking about all the abuse they put up in the film industry, like stories of full-on sexual assault. But they were talking about it as a joke. It was a pre-Me Too and stuff, and they're talking about it as like, oh, like as something funny, like, oh my god, like, can you believe the ridiculous crap that we have to put up with? But that conversation then ended with them bawling. So I think that going in to find the comedy, but then bawling at the end, like, I think that totally describes how these shows now are operating, and I think that is an honest but also like a viable way into these stories.
So some people are saying that Baby Reindeer is actually starting to turn audiences into investigative stalkers. So what's that all about?
Yeah, so Richard Gadd had to go on social media and ask people to stop trying to be internet sleuths, stop trying to dox the real life people that these characters in the show are based on, because apparently people are digging through other people's lives trying to suss out who are the real life abusers and stalkers that he depicts. And Gad says, like, look, like, he changed the details of the real story in the show so that they couldn't figure that out. Yet they're throwing accusations at people that he say are not the right people. And also he said that this is actually like, it's not like it's lost the purpose of the show in a way. It's antithetical to the spirit of the show, because the show is very empathetic. It's not trying to vilify anyone, and yet here are these people trying to point fingers, right? But it's also this whole thing is adding a meta layer to the show, right? Because it's revealing in a whole new way the impulse among audiences to behave like stalkers.